Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tonya L. Whiteside, and I am the CEO and founder of the Whiteside Group. And today we're going to dive into a conversation and topic that is close to all of our hearts, near and dear. We're going to talk about the social and educational perspectives that this pandemic has had on us. We're going to hear from a parent, a teacher. We're going to hear from school psychologists, mental health professional, and also from professors at a university. But first, I'd like to introduce you to my co-host today. Dr. Camalle Shepard is the CEO and founder of the Professional Partners Group, LLC. She obtained her PhD in education, and her research interest is in social economic status, effects on school readiness, achievement scores, and parent engagement, as well as school and workplace diversity. She has over 20 years of experience encompassing business and education, training, and development. And she also does extensive volunteer work in career services and is a proud United States Air Force veteran. Please welcome Dr. Camalle Shepard.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Good to be
Yes, thank
here.
you so much. And so, Dr. Shepard and I, we have been in education for over 20 years, and just through our discussion about education, our students, our parents, and teachers, we wanted to come on today and share some information as well as bring some professionals in. And so, again, we thought that this was a great time as we're moving into the holidays and preparing for a new year, that we would be able to come on here and have a discussion. All right, Dr. Shepard?
Absolutely. I think it's uncertain times for our families, for our students, our teachers, and I think just making sure that everyone involved have a voice so that we can ensure people are staying well, they're staying safe, but also hopefully our conversation will generate ideas and information for school districts and educational leaders to make informed decisions as we progress through this pandemic and hopefully transition out of it very soon.
Yes, absolutely. I'd like to start our conversation off with a parent. Um, Adrienne Turner and her husband are the proud parents of 6 children that range in ages 7 through 28. And of those 6 children, 2 of them are in college. They also have a middle school student and an elementary school student. Please welcome Adrienne Turner.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here
Hi.
joining
Hi.
you.
Yes. Hi, Adrienne. I wanted to have you come on and share your perspective because you have a range. You have elementary, junior high, and college. And I'd love to hear how it's been going for you as a parent and what your students have been experiencing through this pandemic.
Yes, so our oldest, we are a blended family. We have 6 kids. Our oldest actually just finished her master's, and she's actually working at the University of Pomona in sports psychology. So it's kind of interesting. But so she's experiencing it from incoming students coming in. But my personal experience through this journey is just juggling it all, right? So we do have 2 in college, and she got deferred because of the pandemic. So she's home, struggling with that, not being able to not only graduate, but dealing with the pandemic in that way of being online in her first year of college, working so hard to get there and now being deferred. That was hard for her. And then we have a middle schooler who also has an IEP. So that's been a little challenging her. She's more of a hands-on learner. So from that perspective, she's more of, I want to be in the classroom, and the online is not the ideal scenario for her. And then we have our 7-year-old, which, she's in first grade, and that being trying to focus with an iPad. She is hybrid, so she goes 4 days a week, which works out great for her, but it's only 2.5 hours. So it is a little challenging juggling it all.
Yeah. And what would you say you think or believe that the school's responsibility to helping you go through this with your students? What do you see as their responsibility for this?
Actually, I have to say we're in Tustin Ranch. So the school district we're in is very proactive. I work a lot with her direct studies teacher for my middle school, I will say. So she's in 7th grade. And the moment I saw that there were a little bit of concerns regarding her being able to grasp the online aspect of it, I immediately got on with her teachers, and they were very supportive. They actually offered her to come in 4 days versus 2 days. And they said they would only do that with those that were being challenged with the online aspect and wanted them to be able to experience that. So she actually started that this week for the first time. She didn't want to go 4 days a week, but based on where she was struggling with, we just felt it was the best decision for her. So I feel that they've been supportive in that regards. I feel elementary is a little bit more of a challenge, because I feel like the curriculum that they're offering, even the teachers aren't in agreement with it. So I think they're kind of like, well, whatever you're doing at home, if that's working better, feel free to use that. So that's been a little bit of a different challenge for us.
Mm-hmm. And are the two working at home together okay? I mean, being in two, do they work well in the same space?
Well, we have 3 because Geneva's doing college online. So yes,
Okay, so
they all
3.
have their work study areas. We have desks for everybody. So the youngest one does her studies within her room with her desk set up. The other one's downstairs, and then another one is up in her room and her desk. So yeah, they've been juggling that fairly well.
Mm-hmm. And if there were any resources that you feel that you need, what would that be? Any resources to help you? Be it teacher resources, parent resource, any other resources you
Yeah,
maybe.
bringing a tutor in the home. I mean, I really feel honestly, truly, it's been a struggle for our, in total transparency, like it's been a struggle for our middle, like 7th grade. I really feel like in the middle school, although we're getting support, she went from A, B student to C and D student this semester. And that's just been struggle for her, struggle for us. So walking through that, as a parent, just being supportive, saying, you know what, not making excuses, but then also being sympathetic that it's not normal what they're experiencing. And we as parents just have to do our best to support them, but then also not make it a victim and just say, you know what, we're going to get through this. We have to take it step by step, and it'll be okay at the end of the day. Like we'll make it happen.
Have you asked the girls or any of your children if they had to describe this pandemic, what would they say if they had to describe it?
So yeah, I did ask my 18-year-old, and she said it's just eye-opening for her. She's grown a lot through this. She said, Mom, even if going off to school, because she's going to the East Coast for school, she said, I'm okay with being by myself. I'm okay with walking through feeling sad, with different aspects of her life. She's grown a lot closer to God through this. So just eye-opening for her was what she described it in one word. Like, it's just as bad as you think it is. She's learned a lot from it.
That's a great point. I think that's probably a key tip for parents to help your child recognize, or your children recognize, that there's something good, even though it's very difficult. And have you found that the level of work, assignments, etc., have increased during the pandemic, or is it the same for you as a parent and your student and your child?
No, actually, I feel like for middle school, yes, it has. I feel like I kind of wanted a little bit more for my first grader. With middle school, I feel like it's a fair amount. What I find challenging is they're kind of embarrassed to ask the questions that they normally probably would ask in a classroom setting. So they shy away. They can turn off their screen. So I make sure mine gets dressed and fully ready for school. And you need to be present in the class, because I feel like they can check out on technology. They can turn off their screen and they're not present. And then they're not getting all they can get as a teacher. So it's a team effort. It's not just the teacher's responsibility, because if the student isn't participating, it falls on them as well.
Right.
Wow. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing your perspective with us today. And we wish you well, and prayers and fingers crossed that they will get some tutoring going, or maybe some online help, because that is a good point, and it's something that really is needed.
Absolutely.
Right. And just last thing I'll say to Tonya is, at night at dinner, what we do is high lows. And we'll go around the table, because it's a real struggle for all of us. And so we'll say, what was your high and your low? What was something great that happened, and what was a challenge? And we're learning a lot through that.
Wow. That's great. That's a good tip. Highs and lows. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Happy holidays to Yes. Thank you. I think, again, hearing from parents, it is really eye-opening to hear their perspective, and the fact that, she's in a school district where, they are providing great resources, but also at home, asking about highs and lows, and helping the student realize that some things, are good, and there may be some challenges, but, helping them find the good that's going on is really awesome. So I thank Adrienne for sharing her perspective. What I'd like to do is introduce our first panelist. Vanessa Hunter resides in Riverside, California, and she has worked in the mental health field under the umbrella of education for over 16 years. She obtained her Bachelor's of Science degree at Fresno State in physical therapy, and another one in community health science. She later obtained her Master of Science degree and her PPS credential at National University in School Psychology. And she currently works in a charter school system where she assesses and evaluates students of all ages for learning disabilities, autism, attention deficit disorders, and other medical diagnoses, which may impact a student's ability to perform successfully in her academics. And her primary role in counseling students, it ranges from mental health difficulties with self-awareness and self-image. And I totally can see, even from what Adrienne shared with one of her students having an individual education plan, that a lot of students are in crises, particularly to include suicide. So let's welcome Vanessa Hunter.
Hello, good evening.
Oh,
Welcome.
yes, welcome.
Thank you.
Vanessa is also a writer. She's a motivational speaker, and she really wants everyone to see their vision come to life. And overall, she is a believer in the Lord, and I know that she relies on her faith. She's a very encouraging and inspiring person, not just in schools, but in every place that she goes. So I'm very happy to have her with us today. Thank you for being here. How have you seen things change, Vanessa, in terms of the type of requests that you're getting? Have you seen more or less since this pandemic?
There are a lot more requests for counseling services as a result of a lot of the home challenges that people are experiencing because they're at home more now and in this new normal that we've encountered with having to do work at home, parents having to be of assistance in working with their children, and then not to mention the environmental factors of your health. Some people have lost loved ones, some people have experienced illness, financial loss and challenges. So all of those factors have increased now, and it does impact students' well-being, how they concentrate, how they focus. So in the school settings, as a psychologist, as you mentioned earlier, we do assess for learning disabilities and also those challenges in accessing the regular curriculum. And of course, you add the factor of now them not even being in the school settings most, it can be very challenging in their understanding and access to gain the understanding necessary to complete the coursework. So challenges are in the area of trying to decide, is it a true learning disability that they're born with, or is it an acquired situation, temporary in nature as a result of the pandemic? We, even in responding as educational professionals, not just in counseling, but also as teachers, educators, tutors, whatever role it is, in responding, the new way of delivering that assistance and that support to the students has been increasingly challenging. Some has not been challenging because some entities, I work in a charter system now, already were doing technology-based education, if you will. But to do that now, all inclusive as opposed to the option, can be overwhelming too. So everybody's learning. Everybody's learning how to deal in the day-to-day.
Are you, with the testing, do you all have to do things differently in terms of assessing students, especially if they're online or not in person? What does that look like?
Well, it's very challenging because, as you know, when you're wearing a mask, you can't speak as clearly. We also have to observe as we're testing students to see their responses non-verbally and verbally, and then yet keep in mind the state mandates with 6 feet and et cetera, which is unheard of for the type of testing that we do. So we originally, when we went into back in March, the school closures, we didn't test, because there are some things you just can't do on the computer. And you have to be there to see the validity and the reliability of the testing requires in-person live assessing. So that's been very challenging. Now we, as things evolved in the changing of how we deliver and administer the testing, we have been able to streamline and come up with a battery of assessments that may not require in-person, or we've had the situations where you put the plastic barriers and things like that in place, and they've allowed us to go into the settings to test, but we can't stay as long. So your days in assessing become longer. It's more frustrating for the students. That factors in. So therein lies the reliability and the validity, which is very crucial to us as psychologists to make sure when we're observing the student who's already struggling anyway, in their response to the testing anyway, is that response because of the struggle, or is that response true to their innate abilities or lack of? So it's, it's a whole lot of extra that we have to be cognizant of as psychologists, and being patient with them and them being patient with us.
Vanessa, what if you had to identify one major impact as it relates to students with learning disabilities and having to kind of adapt to these new learning platforms? What would you say has been one of the biggest impacts to that student population?
Well, clearly their coursework is affected. Number one, their motivation to want to do the work, their ability to be able to utilize their teacher or tutor or aides, if you will, within the classrooms, being able to use them right away. I'm not saying they're not accessible, they're accessible via the computer, but I mean, if they're in another meeting with another, with another student or other students, I mean, just to be able to access what's necessary for them to learn the material, to ask questions and be supported in completing the work. So that in itself has been major, which means how do they progress in their grades and in their coursework if they're not motivated to do it, number one, if they don't have the supports readily accessible for them to do it or understand it, number two. So it's been huge, as in them already being challenged as a population.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
Absolutely.
huge in their being able to complete the work, which then causes more mental health challenges in their self-worth, their motivation of wanting to do it or even feeling like they can do it, their self-image. It's huge. It's been major, major.
Well, thank you
It
so
is.
much for sharing. Stay with us. We have more panelists, and Dr. Shepard's going to introduce our panelists because I'm waiting on one to get to his desk.
Thank you.
All right. And we do want to remind those of you that are tuned in to this great conversation that you can actually leave your comments on the live stream channels, whichever you are looking at, whether that via the Whiteside group or the Professional Partners group. So we do want to hear from you. We want this to
Yes.
be well-rounded conversation. So certainly if you have any questions for Professional Partners or the Whiteside group or any specific panelists, we want you to feel free to place your comments on these live streams.
Yes.
So our next panelist is Dr. Wayne Shepard, who is an assistant professor of psychology in the Department of Behavior and Social Science Studies at Bethune-Cookman University. He obtained his PhD in industrial organizational psychology. His research interests are in testing and assessments and workplace motivation. He has over 10 years experience in teaching secondary and post-secondary education. He also does extensive volunteer work in career services, in which he facilitated the startup of 2 nonprofit career centers serving participants seeking employment and career growth. He currently serves as the co-chair for the Faculty Senate and faculty advisor for the B.J. Moore Center for Faculty Innovation at Bethune-Cookman University. He also serves as the Education Ministry President at Antioch Missionary Baptist Church and is a proud United States Air Force retired veteran. So welcome, Dr. Wayne Shepard. President at Antioch.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here to participate in such an extraordinary conversation piece that these 2 young ladies put together. I'm honored to have been invited, and I do know that by the end of this session, we all will be better prepared in some way or another in helping our students get through this crisis.
Wonderful. So I'll start your response at how is it teaching at the collegiate level during this pandemic? What have you seen or experienced as a result of kind of changing the way students are instructed during this pandemic?
The instruction aspect of it was quite challenging. Again, as one of the panelists mentioned, having to wear a mask and do your job is quite tasking. It had a far greater impact on the students than I thought it would, considering that they are college level students. I found that in the process of this pandemic or going through it, a lot of the students began to somewhat drift backwards in the abilities that they had conquered at one point in time, i.e., for example, the learning challenges that they had in high school, they had pretty much learned to handle them quite well. And, for the years that I've taught at BCU, and I noticed that with this pandemic, a lot of those issues resurfaced again. We had a lot of students that were running into issues because even though in post-secondary education, we offered the online option, a lot of students, believe it or not, don't choose the online option because they need that presence. They need to be in class and having that one-on-one with the instructor. But I found that with this pandemic, especially the latter half, I would say, this fall term was very challenging. A lot of students were dealing with depression and having to fight that. as well as stay connected academically. So that was a challenge that I had not anticipated.
Wow.
Great, great.
That is something. I mean, I know we deal with that at the high school level, but you're right. I think the impression would be that at the college level, they've worked their way there, but yet, as you say, a lot of them have found themselves going backwards. Do you find that they reach out to you as a professor, or kind of like, we heard earlier from our parent, they don't ask questions. Do you find the same thing? Do they not ask questions or reach out, or do they just drop off?
Yes, there is definitely far less communication
Mm,
that go on between the professor and the students because, of course, we had the 6 feet distance
mm,
that we had to practice, and then, of course, it was mandated that we wear masks all at all times on campus. And I did notice that my relationship with the students
mm,
actually suffered because it's amazing how that mask can actually interfere with your ability to build rapport with your students
right.
and vice versa. And I found that it was quite challenging to be able to work with a student in the way I had been in the past with the 6 feet requirement and the mask requirements. So I think a lot of the students suffered in that regard because I can't speak for all professors, but when I deal with my students, I tend to take a parental approach because I believe that um, the way to get them to do their work is to get them intrinsically motivated, so that they would do it for their own reasons and purposes. And that was hard for me to get my system in
Mhm.
effect like it was before, having the opportunity to sit down with the students, to have office visits. We had to do a lot of stuff via Zoom, and that starves that opportunity to build relationship with the students.
Right.
Absolutely. Did your students give you any perspective um, as to how they felt or how this was impacting them through the course of this semester?
Yeah, it was quite a few of the students complained about the amount of work that they were receiving online. And one of the issues is I think that a lot of students fail to realize that when they are not in the presence of their professor, then it's almost a given that you're going to have more work online because it is important for us to make sure that they learn what they need to know to go to that next level. And so, by them not being in a classroom setting where we can do classroom activities, we find it quite challenging when we have to encourage them to read the chapters at home or wherever they're if they're in the library practicing social distance. It's kind of hard to get them in that mode where they have to do more now than the professors, and it's I really that's kind of shaky ground to say that because I don't want to say that us professors have it easier. We don't. It is definitely still challenging, much more challenging for us, having to conduct classes online, having to synchronize classes. But my major concern is the student, and it's really challenging for the student having additional work to do, and then having to do it now instead of in a classroom setting. And in some cases, people use various different modalities. And the students got to learn all of these different platforms. And all of that is incredibly tasking and challenging to the student while we're trying to find a better way of delivering to them, the learning that they deserve. So the student is by far um, being challenged the most in this pandemic.
Thank you. I think that also your point about the stress on the student, and we talked earlier about making sure there were plans. I think that kind of highlights the role of advisors, counselors, Coaches that are helping students get through this, those individuals, their role, I would say, has increased as well. They aren't often talked about, but those roles are going to be very critical, specifically during the pandemic, but also for students who may be behind as a result of not being able to adapt to these varying learning platforms. So I definitely want to highlight that advisors, counselors, coaches for students, those roles are going to be very key as well as we progress through and get to the end of the pandemic.
Very much so. I agree 100% because those are the ones that we're going to have to rely on for retention. Those are the ones that we're going to have to rely on to keep those students motivated to turn the corners that that are before them. So definitely, Dr. Shepard, that is definitely a critical component. There is our counselors and our coaches and advisors.
Right. We had a question that popped up on the screen. What tools are available for students facing those challenges that will help them? And I know we have lots of resources, and I found sometimes they're overwhelmed with so many. How do we direct them to those resources? Does your university offer that as well? Vanessa, do you all have ways of letting your students know how to access tools?
Yes. Basically, what our counselors do on the campuses is they and the teachers, they reach out to the students to let them know almost daily, and they have websites that they've established, various links that they can use for whatever their needs are. They also, they also keep them updated, especially as they're communicating with the teachers. They also keep them updated when they have new links that come along. We have so many links that have evolved since March. It's incredible, but we have various places for them to go to even after hours, not just during the day, but even after hours. So it's normally through their teachers and through their counselors.
All right. Dr. Wayne Shepard, how about you? How do you all at your university share the resources, or do they find it pretty easy? Do we lose him?
No, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can now. Yes.
Okay. The university, of course, we've maintained or we consistently use the same modality, the same form of
I think we lost you there.
Yeah, I think you froze. I know it sounds like he started to talk about they use the same, ways to reach out to students. So the hope would be that they know that it's there, that they will utilize those resources that are available to them, during this time. And you're right, Vanessa, it is sometimes overwhelming. I found that it's there, but unfortunately, sometimes when there are so many things, they want you to just tell me the one or the two that I need to, access. And, and I'm happy to do it because, it is overwhelming and it can be challenging. And we want to do what we can to help support them to take some of the stress off of them that, they're experiencing, through all of this.
I was going to say that I know sometimes the flexibility in your school settings, like you work in, Tonya, may not be able to offer like some of the individualized resources that charter systems offer. And what I was going to say, and not putting it down, it's just the nature of the situation. But like with the charter schools that I work in, we had to literally provide laptops for home use, set up a system in those young people attaining that, but yet still staying safe when they would come to pick those items up and then use them at home. And then so when you don't have the motivation or you may not have parents that have the wherewithal to know how to use the computer systems, laptops, and the programming, that's challenging in itself. So if you're looking at a population that are not tech savvy, most of our young people are. But if you're looking at a population that's not tech savvy, and you're looking at special needs individuals that already have the challenges, you can imagine, like you said, how overwhelming that is. So our counselors like yourself are key individuals to resourcefully providing those easy means for those students to be able to assist and work with those various medias.
Right.
That's a really good point, Vanessa. You talk about, being tech savvy. We have a lot of families who, because parents have to work, grandparents are responsible for kind of making sure the students get through their work on a given day. And we certainly know that many of our grandparents are not tech savvy in that regard. So I think that's also a gap for those students who, we all have to work, and we know parents have to work, but I think that's also a key takeaway. It's what about those students that are in situations where they don't have that level of support at home from a technical perspective. I think that's an impact to the students as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I would like to bring on, if we can, we have entered into a space where our mental health counselor is with us now. Mr. Martinez Sellers is a therapist. We also know him as a mental health hygienist, and he is the owner of Marcel Consulting. Also, he's the host of Mental Health Matters with Marty, and he has a podcast. And I'd love to welcome him to this conversation.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Listen, it's been a great conversation going on, and good to see everyone in this COVID Christmas holiday that we've been experiencing.
Yes. So, Martinez, what does it look like now in mental health? Has it changed much? I mean, we've been in this pandemic now since March.
Right.
What is mental health look like now?
The whole scope of mental health has totally changed as a result of this pandemic. With everything else that's going on, we've had the pandemic. We've had a lot of social injustice that's happening. We saw the Black Lives Matter movement. We saw the political unrest that's been happening on a national level in this presidential campaign and election. So, and then our children at home, parents, and all, we have seen the magnification of mental health, specifically depression, anxiety, grief. All of these things have been impacted drastically because of everything that's going on. And since this show has been talking a lot about our school-age children, I've had more referrals from school-age children and specifically Black men in the past 4 to 6 months than I have in 4 years of practice that I've been in. So mental health, we're on this upswing about mental health. We thank God for psychologists such as Vanessa, who's out there. And I think if we get more partnerships with our school psychologists and our therapists so that we can put together integrative plans to help our children through a lot of what they're going through, we're going to see a lot of this happening as well, so that we can improve a lot of things. Because let's be honest, one, I don't like how we have labeled this. We call this social distancing. Social distancing plays with the psychology of a person. So I can no longer be socially connected. No, we still need to have social connections. We need to have physical distancing. So I wish they would have said, and I tell also, no, we keep the social connections. We just practice physical distancing. See how the difference with that has played even on our psychology? And when
Absolutely.
And when we're dealing with children, school was meant, part of school is about socialization. We haven't even gone into child abuse because our teachers are the biggest proponents and the largest reporters as we're dealing with child abuse. So kids are going home to and staying in abusive situations. We have not talked about domestic violence that are happening where our mothers and wives cannot escape because they're in the hands of the. We have not talked about OCD that's going to obsessive compulsive disorder, all these other things. I do believe in the mental health field, we're going to see the aftermaths of COVID for some 3 to 5 years afterwards as we now find what the new normal is in mental health.
Right. Now, Martinez, I want to ask you, before you came on, were you being Santa?
I was being Santa. I was. I had
Okay,
my
because
little Santa
I see
hat
the
on.
remnants. Yeah, I see the
Oh,
remnants on your head.
on my head. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm coming on here looking all crazy, huh?
It's still there. You got like a red string or something.
How about this? We'll just keep on my Santa hat. There we go.
Yeah,
There we
I love
go.
it.
So, and it's changed how we do things. Even in our mental health, we had to reinvent all of our service because we were seeing everyone in person. They don't teach online therapy in schools, so we had to reinvent our entire practice in less than 2 weeks while maintaining business, and that was difficult. It cost us probably over $15,000 just to get everything up and running so that we can do Zoom calls, so that we can do now transmit information electronically, then put in all those protective measures. So that was a lot. I know therapists who are fatigued. We know doctors who are fatigued. Everyone's fatigued. We're on COVID fatigue, a COVID overload. So I thank you for having these conversations, Dr. Shepard, and definitely Tonya, because we need more conversations like that so we can tell people it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's okay to say, listen, I'm overwhelmed. We may not know where our next meal comes from.
Right.
And our communities of color are definitely impacted the first and the hardest during these type of situations. So I'm glad that we're now having the conversations in our Black and brown communities. Because let me share this with you. When I have Black men calling me and doing the ugly Oprah cry over Zoom,
Ooh.
we don't have enough safe places, and I'm sure the professor can attest to that. Safe places for Black men just to unwind and say, I don't know what's going on. We haven't even talked about the suicide rate that is increasing.
That's correct.
As a result of this, and how it's affecting the population that Vanessa Hunter serves. I've lost a young man he would have been 25 this year, where he took a bus from Southern California all the way up to San Francisco. That's about a 10-hour bus ride because he felt his life was no longer valuable and there was no other way out, and he jumped off of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh.
Men are more intentional about suicide.
Yeah.
And so we have to take this. Have suicide rates gone up? Listen, I tell everyone, don't play when it comes to someone saying they're feeling stressed. Call a therapist. Call somebody. There's a lot of helplines out there. You can text TALK to 741-741, and that will get you in with someone that's a professional who can help you with that. And we have to continue to have these. I said this way, and not to take up too much time, I just came in and overwhelmed you all. Thank you. I'm just passionate about this, y'all. I really am. Because too many in our community are suffering in silence in the shadow of shame. And we have to take the shame off of saying, I'm not okay. Brother, it's okay that you're not okay. Sister, it's okay you're not okay. Mama, it's okay you're not okay. Because we're all just taking it one day at a time. Because there's some days I'm not okay. And I tell my people, say, listen, I'm sorry. Is this a crisis today? Because I need a mental health day myself. Because I can't be your best therapist because I'm overwhelmed.
Wow. Yes, some of the comments, COVID overload, definitely.
Yes.
And yes, it is okay to not be okay, because I think, prior to this, we have been, I don't know if the word, the correct term would be, but, made to think that,
Mm-hmm.
if you reach out to somebody, in the mental health field, something's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, there's a stigma behind it. And especially with men not
Yes.
having a place to feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And definitely in the schools, I've
Mm-hmm.
as well, in my high school, seen
Mm-hmm.
uh, seeing students that are struggling, and some of
Yes.
them, mostly the girls, will say they're not okay. The boys do not. So I
Right.
100% agree with you. And then we had someone to share. Paula says it is okay to not be okay.
You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
And if I could just piggyback on that, because look at the messages, especially our black and brown young boys have been told. They've been told to man up. They've been told to suck it up. They've been told not to be a punk. Men don't cry. What's your problem? All these other things, not what's bothering you or are you hurting or how can I help you, but like, what's your problem? So all of that, I call it the Coca-Cola syndrome. So you suppress all those things down, and then the slightest thing, they explode all over themselves and
Right.
everyone else. Because Vanessa will definitely tell you, we have misdiagnosed our young man
Yeah.
in that, because we see anger. Oh, they're angry, so they have to be oppositional. No, they're depressed. They're
Mhm.
not oppositional. They just want someone to hear. The riots that we've seen are an example of that. Riots are voices of the unheard population.
Yeah.
That's anger when they can do nothing else. That's why we've had those riots. People say, listen, you wouldn't listen to us when we tried to sit at the table, so we're going to get your attention that way. Most young boys will much rather them be labeled as oppositional as than being depressed or not understanding something in the school system.
That's an outstanding point, Marty. Outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because we get it. So I've had the honor of working with some other psychologists, and so in most of your mental health, especially with young people, you want to modern and rather mirror patterns that they're doing at home and patterns that they're doing at school. What are the dual patterns that we're seeing in that, so we can have these conversations? And I think and then we also have to have more therapists that look like us, that have our experiences. As a black male therapist, I only represent 1% of the field.
Mm,
1%.
mm,
So it's hard for a young black boy to open up when it's been dominated by Anglo females who don't have any idea what we've gone through. I
right.
can't open up to her because she's scared, because I said I'm thinking about beating someone down I'm beating them down because I got all this frustration and anger I need to get out. I'm not scared of that. I said, okay. So after you beat them down, what's gonna happen?
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna report you. What's gonna happen? You're gonna beat them down, and you're gonna be in a worse situation. So let's talk through this again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
keep having these conversations. We have to. If we can
Yes.
change one, we've done our job.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Camille Shepard, you want to bring in our other professor?
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Daniel Hollar, who is an assistant professor of psychology and the chair for the Department of Behavior and Social Science Studies at Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach, Florida. His experience spans across many, many years. Research with law enforcement agencies and personnel regarding suicide, trauma, and risk prevention.
Beautiful.
For over 12 years, he's worked alongside law enforcement professionals at the largest forensic psychiatric inpatient hospital in Florida, providing individual and group therapy, competency evaluation and training, mental status evaluations for involuntary commitments, and expert testimony in the state of Florida. Dr. Hollar has subcontracted work for the Department of Juvenile Justice and the Department of Children and Families for over a decade. His expertise, suicide risk assessment. He's authored a book on suicide and eating disorder behavior among African Americans. He's written a book chapter on assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of psychiatric disorders in African American clients, and co-authored several suicide-related articles in peer-reviewed scientific journals. Dr. Hollar is also the president and CEO of a private consulting firm, Dannenberg Solutions, and he's currently working with law enforcement on reducing mental health risk factors related to trauma and suicide for police officers. So we want to welcome Dr. Daniel Hollar to this conversation.
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Shepard.
Welcome.
Thank you for this invite.
Absolutely. So many great experts we have on our panel. So what is your perspective, Dr. Hollar, just from a mental health perspective, as we've gone through this pandemic and are continuing to go through the pandemic? And Marty had some great points as well. If you have things to share as it relates to suicide, et cetera, we'd love to get your perspective on what you've experienced from a mental health perspective as well.
Yes, most definitely. So again, thank you all for inviting me to be here. I'm sorry that I tuned in a little late. I actually was here listening to the side, but also was just in a radio interview talking about predictive policing, of all things, and how that affects our community. But when we talk about suicide, what I would like to say is for families to just be aware of risk factors for themselves as well as for their children and their friends and close family members. And there's a theory called the interpersonal psychological theory of serious suicide behavior. And so this theory looks at people who go on to actually die by suicide. So the theory predicts which individuals are most likely to die by suicide. And so essentially the theory breaks down into three factors that people need to be aware of. One of them, which is, and actually two of these factors are severely impacted by COVID-19. One of these factors is the need to belong. So the need to belong is a fundamental need of all human beings. We're social creatures. And so when that need to belong is thwarted, those individuals feel socially isolated. They feel like they don't fit in anywhere, right? So they have this thwarted belongingness. They want to fit in and belong and socialize, but they can't because something is stopping them from doing that. The other factor is, and we can kind of see how COVID-19 affects impairs our ability to socialize and interact with each other like we historically have done. The second factor is this perceived burdensomeness. So perceived burdensomeness is a cognitive distortion. So it's the way that you're thinking that's a misperception of reality. And it's a way that you think and where you feel that you're so ineffective and you're such a burden to others, to society, that people would be better off without you. Right. So we can look at COVID-19. How many people lost their jobs recently? Right. The unemployment rate, I believe, doubled in this country. People are on food lines like never before. So people are feeling ineffective. They're feeling like a burden to their families, that they need to ask for help, to the government and the systems that help you with unemployment. So again, that's another factor, another risk factor. And a critical third factor is this acquired capability, which is the ability to injure and harm yourself. Because as humans and creatures, we have a natural thrive or a drive to live and to thrive. And so it's very hard for us to actually do things to hurt ourselves or to take our own lives. And you have to acquire the ability to do that, so to speak. And when I say acquire, what I mean is people who have repeated exposure to pain, trauma, and violence tend to be individuals who are likely to go on and injure themselves seriously to the point of death if they are in fact suicidal. So again, those three factors: perceived burdensomeness, feeling like you're a burden to others, you can't make money, you can't find a job, you can't contribute to society. Thwarted need to belong, you want to socialize and interact, you're feeling socially isolated, there are things and forces stopping you from interacting with others, and this acquired capability or this experience with trauma, right? And we know that our communities have a high rate of violence and trauma in the community. So Black people in particular need to be aware of these issues. People often think suicide has nothing to do with us, but it totally does. And it's been rising over the last 20 years. Some years it rose 300%, you know, over a 10-year period at one point. So this is a rising phenomenon in our community. One of the things that I do that I talk about to try to help mitigate some of these factors, I look at some of the cultural protective factors associated with reducing suicide risk. So for Black men, what I found in my research is that African self-fortification, so how you feel about yourself as an individual of African descent, how you participate in your community and your cultural practices. Do you belong to a fraternity, a sorority? Do you go to a Black church that's African centered? Not saying that you practice traditional African religions, but that you have Black centered and Afrocentric focus in your community, in the organizations that you belong to, professional organizations, things of that nature. Those things will help to reduce your risk factors for suicide ideation. So that would be one of the things that I would recommend, that while you're home with your family, now's a good time to teach Black history, teach about your community, teach about the problems that we've been through and how we are resilient people and we've survived worse times than this, and that we can survive them again.
Wow, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Funny story. We've got, I mean, it's not funny, but kids who have so much time on their hands because, either they're in online 100% or they're in hybrid. And as Dr. Camalle Shepard shared, parents are working and they have so much time. We've had students go to the local store that normally don't go in the middle of the day, committing crimes and, doing things that are, they probably wouldn't be doing if they were sitting in a classroom. So we are, doing what we can to find, things that they can do. And it has been really difficult and challenging, especially at the high school level, because sports have been put on hold. So, where you would see them, playing football or basketball or soccer, a lot of the things that were comforting to them that took up time has been taken away from them, temporarily. And, they're finding themselves in situations that could, ultimately end them up seeing, themselves in jail or, juvenile justice system. But it definitely has impacted our young people. So thank you for sharing that information. Do you anticipate seeing this swing back? A lot of students have gone to work where parents have lost their jobs, as you've said. Do you see this being a trend that may continue for a while? I know one of our panelists said earlier, I think it was Marty, sharing that this may go on for several more years. Do you see this trend turning anytime soon?
Well, I do believe that it will continue for a number of years, just because once you change human behavior, it's going to be hard to change it back to something that it used to be. I think we will get close to a sense of normalcy that we've had historically, where we can interact without being 6 feet away from each other. That will come in time. But some of these things are going to stay, like virtual learning. This is something that a lot of money has been spent on investing in and training educators on how to use these systems, and these training programs are going to continue. It's also very convenient. It allows you to reach more people. So I don't see virtual learning environments going away. I actually see them increasing.
Right.
Yes.
All right.
I think one thing that I would like to say, that COVID-19 has revealed the large technology gaps between Black and white communities, right? Or communities of color and the majority society. And so what I think we should take from this is that, I'm talking more about college age students, because, my kids in elementary, my children in elementary school, they get computers from their school to work at home. So why can't we do that at the university level? And not only that, why don't we give them mobile hotspots so they have Wi-Fi wherever they go? They don't have to go to the library. They don't have to go to McDonald's and sit there and do their work. So these are things that we need to start thinking about, how we're spending our monies and where we can reallocate those funds to to give our students the leg up that they need, because they're already behind, and this is making them fall even further behind, especially at an institution like Bethune-Cookman University, where we serve first-generation college students, people from extreme impoverished environments, students who are doing this all on their own with no parental support and no parental understanding of what it means to be a college student. They're at home and they're having to sacrifice their college work to monitor their little brothers and sisters who are in elementary school. So they're making these big sacrifices that may not pay off for them in the future,
And I agree with what Dr. Hollar said, because we have to now, if we're talking about, I think the pandemic has an opportunity to bring out the best in us, and the entrepreneurial skills now need to kick in for those who are seeking to do some type of community service or launching some sort of nonprofit. Let's partner with some of our churches and let's get some of these things out there where we can partner and get some computer technology courses, those type of things that we can help to help our students, help our young people along the way in this, so that we are not behind the 8 ball as it comes to technology. Listen, they know how to play PlayStation. Instead of buying the latest PlayStation 5, let's reinvest that money in something else that's going to help us, because we cannot forget about Big Mama, because in our community, we have multi-generational learning. Big Mama might be teaching the kids. Big Mama doesn't want that iPad or that Chromebook to come home, because Big Mama knows if they break it, she doesn't have money to replace it. And those are some of the situations we've seen in when we're looking at some places down south and in our lower socioeconomic environments and communities where they're not sure of that, or like we all have seen where those kids were sitting outside of Del Taco just to get the hot spot. So now's the time that we can be really creative, y'all. And then this is how we bring our communities together. This is how we can even bring our churches together, because they have these big, huge fellowship halls just sitting there, y'all. Come on now. This is how we use our black and brown dollars to help reinvent and help each other, so that we now can be a step up, because this is amazing opportunity, not a setback, but a fail forward opportunity.
I love that. And I'd love to bring on, this is a great time after hearing Dr. Hollar and you, Martinez and Vanessa, Leatrice Charles. Leatrice Charles is an educator in the junior high school right now in a predominantly African-American school. She's been teaching since 1986. And she began as a paraprofessional in the Los Angeles Unified School District while in college at Long Beach State University. And she knew at an early age that she wanted to be in education. And she started first teaching in 1989, and she's taught everything pre-K to 8th grade. She also has a master's in secondary education. Teaching history and social science in Buena Park School District, which is in Orange County, California. And she's also taught in private schools. And she's currently now teaching at a school in her community where she grew up. And it's really where she wanted to end her teaching, to be able to give back to her community. So let's welcome Leatrice Charles to the conversation.
Hey everybody, this has been amazing. Oh my goodness, this is a dream come true to hear all these Black voices speaking on behalf of our children. This is amazing, you guys. So thank you for inviting me. I'm in the trenches. I'm there.
Tell us about your experience teaching, right now during this pandemic. What does that look like for you there in school? Because you have 6th grade, right? You're teaching 6th grade?
Yeah. I have 6th grade. I am actually the grade level chair for 6th grade. I work at Green Dot Public Schools, which is a charter school within Los Angeles Unified. It's in the heart of LA, right next to Inglewood. And it is in what we would call South Central LA. When I was growing up, I didn't like that term, but okay, if I say it, then you know. But I am a part of an area. It's an area where, like I said, where I grew up, and it's all of the schools in or around are either part of LA Unified or Inglewood Unified. And we were asynchronous in the spring, where the students got their assignments posted in Google Classroom, and they were able to just get their class, and then we checked in with them. And it, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, when we knew nothing, it worked because we kind of had kids had a foundation from the classes and the lessons that we taught from, and just finished out the school year. When we started again, we started August, so we've been teaching. We've been teaching live in Zoom. We got lots of training. So I just want to say from the onset, there have been a lot of positive things that have come from this pandemic. I know pandemic, the root word is pan and brings on a panic, but I don't think that we should be in a panic about something that God has already ordained. So so I said, I'm going to look at the positive. I'm going to see what positive things, because I know when I turn that camera on with those kids, I need to be Susie Sunshine so that I can get them to cooperate. I have middle schoolers, and I have middle school students who I have to try to engage with. And those kids there, I need to be bigger than Fortnite. I need to be a little bit more interesting in order to get them to come on. Some kids are coming on camera in their pajamas, and I'm okay with that because I know that we've all learned Zoom dress code, good from the top up. So I'm this is their new normal. So I'm trying to transfer some of those things. So we've been trained quite a bit over the summer to kind of come to step into live teaching. But as far as my experience, I've taught in Orange County. My children, it was amazing. While I was getting my credential and working on all the alphabet behind my name, my students, my girls were growing up, and they grew up at Friendship Baptist Church and got a great foundation in the Lord. But we also had lots of, like Marty said, we have lots of supports through educational supports through the church, and that just kind of kept me going with the village. And then as I moved into from elementary education, because I started preschool, as my kids got older, I moved up. So at preschool, elementary, middle school, and then I kind of fell into my groove with middle school students because I feel like that's where they're most impressionable. That's where they're most emotional. They're just poor little things. They're too old to really resist and make it complicated, but they're still pliable. So I love that age because you can really, that seed is planted, but you really got to work at watering that thing. It's sprouted, and so now you have to take care of it. And that's the way I look at middle school. And I'm seeing a lot of fruits of my labor because a lot of the kids, whether I was at a private school or at a public school, I see a lot of students now. They're able to survive all of this because you do need a foundation. You need someone to pour into them so that they can survive something like this. But for the younger students, as I moved through, I kind of found my groove in middle school, but I have a lot of students who I still have to support who are in high school and college. My daughters went to a historically Black college, and so that they were determined to do that because they went to school in Orange County. I'm just going to leave that there. We live in Compton, and our lives are all around Orange County. So they're well-rounded. So they wanted that, and that's good, and I appreciate that. But that's kind of my story too. Teaching in different schools, I said, you know what? I feel like the where I can make the most impact and what was tugging at my heart when I started teaching. One of my 6th grade teachers was my mentor. And when she retired and moved on, she pricked my heart and said, you really need to come back to where you were. And I left that there and decided to do that when I changed from elementary to secondary education. So, and it has truly, I listened, and I'm very, very pleased that I made that choice because I'm now seeing I'm serving kids who they had kids who were in 2-parent homes, and everything was kind of carved out and really good for them, and I could just kind of give them what they need and expected something back. But now I'm serving kids who have many different situations. Not kids who are in foster homes, who are in group homes, who are raised by their grandparents, who are kids across the country because they couldn't be in their home. Right. Parents who are sick. I get a lot of kids who are on camera and they're in cars. They're in their car, and I can see them moving. And so I'm very strict in the classroom because I just feel like they need that old school foundation. But I had to really stretch and change the way I do things because they have no control over who they are and what's going on in the environment around them. Even in my classroom, when they come in the classroom, some of the kids were very upset about coming on camera. I don't want them to see me. They're middle schoolers. I don't want to show my face. I don't want to be on camera. So I had to build their self-esteem. I started a girls club on campus where the school is mostly Black and brown girls, where we just talked about self-esteem, about being on camera and what that looks like, and telling them it's okay and that you're beautiful. Girl, I want to see your eyes. Girl, put your hair. Don't come on that camera with that rag on, I had to
Teach them.
I had to teach them. But we all had to learn Zoom culture.
Right.
We had Zoom etiquette, Zoom. So as the things that I learned and I experienced, I really have a passion for transferring that to students, because it's important, and teach a few parents too, because I had parents walking in the background, and sit up straight, turn your camera on, tell your mom to put a robe on, those kinds of things.
Wow.
Cover it up. But it's been a teaching experience on all of us, because now what we have seen now, we've gotten glimpses into for me, my patients' homes. So now I can see why they have the trauma that they have. You can see why the kids are having some learning challenges with that. So it really has given us a peep into the psychology and the deeper rooted generational challenges that we as Black and brown people have, and getting past stigmas in order to learn, because you can't teach them until we get past some of these stigmas that they're getting through. And now Zoom and social media, because they're on this all day, so they're concerned about it. So now we have to teach them from a different perspective in which they can understand, while still trying to uphold all of the common core that you all, God bless your heart and your ministry, have to do.
If I could jump in real quick, I think it's also important to educate families about this new surveillance culture that we're under. It seems like COVID-19 has opened the door for that. I remember, years prior, we were all very concerned about being tracked and having surveillance on us. But now it's not just on social media. You're able to be surveilled in your home. So secondary school teachers can see what goes on in the home. They can see if there's inappropriate behavior going on in the background. They can hear verbal abuse going on in the home. So be aware of these things, that you are being monitored. Somebody is watching, and DCF may come and knock on your door. So at all times, be on your best behavior and be aware that you're being monitored. There were a couple of incidents that were in the news this year about, people being abused. A young man abused his sibling or relative on camera, and the teacher, witnessed what was going on, as well as, inappropriate conduct from some parents that don't really get that, that they can be seen and everyone's watching them. The teacher's watching, the students are watching what's going on in the background. We've seen that in the news too, that some unfortunate incidents that have occurred. So everyone needs to be aware that we are here. We're in that, big brother society. And we're being monitored and tracked. I was just on a call about predictive policing. Same thing. They're looking at our behavior on the cameras, surveilling communities, and then trying to predict, if we're going to offend. Kind of like Minority Report, but not as fantastic as that movie was.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to assure students of when they were with the whole camera issue, is that to let them know that I am still responsible for you while you're on camera. I'm a mandated reporter. I still had to be certified. And so while you are on camera, I'm still responsible for you. And that's the conversation that I have with parents, to let them know that Mrs. Charles still care. I care about you. I care what's happening to you. I'm looking, not to critique your background or your home or your living arrangement, but I'm there to make sure you're safe, just as if you were in my classroom. So I tell them that too. Turn your camera on, because it's like coming in the door of my classroom. And I think that's one thing that the pandemic has done, the COVID environment has done. It's really brought us a lot closer in ways, even though we're distant and we're doing distance learning, we really are a lot closer than we really would be. I just did parent conferences, and I had 100% participation, because I had everybody's cell phone number, every parent's cell phone number, and I had every parent's email address. So I would be at the school waiting for them to show up, and parents, it's not their fault. work schedules and just schedules with, it's not their fault all the time that they're not there. But I'm able to call them on their phone or do a Zoom call with them, over social media, whatever it takes. They are getting in touch with me and they want to know, and people are concerned. They want their kids to do well. And so that's our responsibility, is to make sure that no matter what, then we're supporting the kids no matter what. Because for some kids, this is their normal. They've learned this, and this is different for us, but this is their norm. This is their norm.
Right.
If I can interject here, alongside of what you all have said in regards to, us becoming more personal with, it has this climate has helped us all to become exactly what should have been all along. That homeschool collaboration, the community building and unifying. We've all had to go beyond our traditional roles as educators and responsible individuals. We've all had to hone in to our deep caring about these students and what they're going through. I know for me, it's not ideal, and the others on the line probably can concur. When we're doing counseling, I've now had to counsel students on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas there are some that would love that, it takes away from them wanting to open up. Mm-hmm. So we've had to go beyond our fears of being in their home environment, them allowing us to come. And I'm not talking about students, I'm talking about parents.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I've even had some students that would not participate in counseling because of the fact that their parents have said, you know what, I don't want you to be on the phone. I don't know that you're really on the phone with your counselor, et cetera, because we have the confidentiality piece that's imperative and that we still have to adhere to. So Ms. Leatrice was right, but she talked about, now we're exposed to them in cars, some of them in their homes and maybe then with the abuse that has been occurring, maybe realizing, some of the things that they've been hiding and not opening up about in the sessions, and now pulling back using the excuse COVID and what happened. So it is a big, it's bigger than what we're talking about. It's bigger than what we're talking about. More conversations like this need to happen. There's going to be changes to the trajectory of how we report as mandate reporters, because there's the privacy issue of their home. So, it's a bigger discussion, than.
Dr. Wayne Shepard, you had something to share. Thank you, Vanessa, for that.
Yeah, it was actually Vanessa touched on a little bit, and Dr. Hollar. One of the things that is most concerning to me is that this is a long journey for African Americans. This is going to be a long journey for us because we see a lot via Zoom, but it's a lot we don't see. And a lot of parents losing their jobs in their home 24/7 with their wives. You have spousal abuse. You have all types of activities that are going on in the household due to the fact that people are forced to quarantine. And these are going to have resounding impacts for years to come. And it's going to, I'm afraid that it's going to be tremendous in our community, in the African American community. And we're going to have meetings, presentations. We're going to have to get out into our churches to talk to our people about how they can heal and how they need to come to grips with what has happened to us because of the disparities and the distance that has been now, it's almost has tripled the level of learning that our kids have gotten since the pandemic has decreased quite significantly. So now we have that disparity of the learning difference between white America and African Americans. So we've got to be there. We've got to be an enormous form or type of strength to our students, to our community, because I think as was said earlier, I think Marty said it earlier, We can overcome this. We can do this,
Yes.
but we're going to have to do it as a as a team, getting out into our
Yes.
churches and getting out into our communities and using those vast halls and these big pearly
Yes.
gate churches that we have. We got to get out there and we got to teach our people, and we've got to get them to begin to talk about their emotional feelings and how they feel,
Yes.
so that we can address them. And as men, as women, sit collectively together to let those emotions flow out of them, so that we can get a better understanding of where we are.
Wow, thank you. And I want to share a comment from one of the viewers. She says, "Thank you. Amazing panel and discussion. I appreciate the importance of working together with our students, family, teachers, church, and community. Now I know it's okay for me to be sad when I'm not seeing my girls in our mentoring programs." And so I appreciate everything that each of you have shared with us today. And I agree, this is just the beginning. We also have someone who says they have a parent conference tomorrow, and last quarter there were no more than 3 parents in the Zoom class conference. So again, it looks different for everyone. Some people can be a part of it, and some are zoomed out, fatigue. It's real, but we do need to do more. And this one, Alana Moore says she agrees. Over Zoom, you want your interactions to feel relational, not transactional, which can be difficult at times. And I definitely have heard from our school counselors that says it has been a little challenging getting students to meet with them online because they really want to be in person. We're so close to the end of our time, but I want to have each panelist just share something that our viewers can take away from this as we continue through the rest of the year and the start of the new year. Dr. Hollar, I'd like to start with you. Something you'd like to share as something that we can take away from this? Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
Doctor, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I would just like to say that to families and individuals to please stay vigilant. The pandemic is worse today than it was, when we found out about it back in March and February. It's highly contagious. It's more contagious than they even thought before. They're saying that you need more than 6 feet, up to maybe 20 feet at times. So just stay vigilant. I know we're all fatigued about this, but as they say, this too shall pass. Be hopeful and optimistic that we will get some sense of normalcy. It'll never go back to how it used to be. But we won't all be locked down in our homes on house arrest, for the next 20 or 30 years, hopefully, and give our children some hope that, yes, the sports will come back. I mean, we've had pandemics before, the Spanish flu, and things went back to normal after some time. So I would like to just give them some hope, but tell them to please stay vigilant. Things are about to get worse in January and February. And stay safe. Wear your mask.
All right. Thank you. Miss Vanessa Hunter.
I would like to say, and I just appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel with such wonderful professionals. To see this is just a portion of what probably and hopefully will go on in the future as we continue to deal with not just the pandemic, but just the new way of learning. And it is a new way of learning in some instances. And don't, as students and as parents work with your students, and as educators working with this population, do not look at it as a bad thing. Look at it as a new way of learning and find ways to motivate one another, to be community oriented, and to help one another. This is the time where we can use our abilities. I think somebody said it earlier, to use those things, that creative juices we have, to come up with ways of helping one another. There are so many resources out there that we can use that have come up in just this pandemic. So many resources. And whoever needs to reach out, please, with Dr. Shepard and Ms. Tonya, let us know so we can be of help to you and bring those resources to you.
All right. Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Martinez Sellers. Any closing?
Yes. I think during this time, one of the things I want to encourage people, it's okay to see a therapist. It's okay to pray and see a therapist, and my faith won't change none the same. Let me say, and I say this because too often, pastors, let me share this. Please refer your people out for mental health counseling. Spiritual counseling, you know what? Hey, I have a degree in divinity. I get it. I can do spiritual, but let's be realistic and let's not overwork yourself. It's okay to see a therapist and say, I'm not okay, and you're not deemed crazy. In fact, because you said you're not okay and you're trying to get the help, that's going to help. So we got to continue to have these conversations. I'm not crazy because I have a therapist, and I am a therapist. I have a life coach. I have a business coach. I see all of them. Listen, if we need to change our titles to be a coach to you so you feel better, I don't care what you call us. We can be a life coach, a business coach, whatever. Get the necessary help. Don't suffer in silence. Don't continue to do this on your own. Speak up. Speak out so that you can live. That's all I want to say.
Yes. Dr. Wayne Shepard, closing remarks.
I think for us to get through this, again, emotional support is what we're going to have to depend on from one another. So my advice is to stop, to listen, comfort, and then educate. We need to make sure that we do that because we can get so entangled in what we're going through, and we don't stop and listen at our students. And we don't provide the comfort because we're not listening. And then how can you educate if the student is distraught and going through issues? So stop, listen, comfort, and educate.
Love it. Thank you. And finally, our teacher, Miss Leatrice, who's right there in the trenches with our junior high students. What would you like to share with us in closing?
Well, I really want families to know that connect with your students. Don't feel like you have to teach them. A lot of parents say, I don't know this. It's okay. You don't feel like you have to know the technology. Just support your student and know that we're being paid to be your resource now. You're directly in touch with us. And so with that computer in front of you, what this has done is the pandemic, COVID has lifted the veil on education. So now the resources are literally right in front of the students, and you don't have to guess about what your students are doing anymore because the classroom is right in their hands. So take this opportunity to get to know what the students are learning and use it as a time, whether it's family time or however you have to support that student or whoever you are in that student's life for support. Just be there for them. We are still in an emergency crisis, and it's okay to not know and have all the answers. You don't have to be the teacher, just be the child, the love of that child's life, because that's really what it's all about.
Love that. Thank you so much.
Great. And our panelists have been phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Ultimate professionals and experts in their areas. And we want to make sure that those that have viewed tonight have a way to contact them or get more information if they would like to do so. So we do have some information for those that we may not have. We will certainly allow you to share your contact information with the viewers. For those that may want to reach out to Dr. Daniel Hollar, we have that information to share. If you would like more information or would like to speak further with Dr. Hollar. We also have information for Dr. Wayne Shepard. And do we have the information for Mr. Sellers?
Yes, I can be found at mentalhealthmarty.com.
Yes.
Fantastic. Miss Vanessa? How can you be contacted?
You can email me at pinkpearl_08@yahoo.com. I
Thank
don't know if
you.
we can type that in.
And Miss Charles, I see it here, but if you will share your information.
My email address is leetris.charles@animo.org.
Thank you.
Yay. Well, thank you. The comments have been coming in.
Yes.
Great discussion, outstanding discussion by panelists. Thank you for your insight and transparency. People have loved the conversation. They've said nicely done, everyone. And individuals have said how much they have benefited from this conversation. So I want to thank all of you, for joining us today. Dr. Camalle Shepard, thank you for your insight and your expertise and the work that you're doing in education. And it's been an honor to co-host this with you today. So again, we want to thank all of you for being with us today. Dr. Shepard.
Thank you. No, the thanks goes to you, Mrs. Whiteside, for being a great visionary and collaborator. This has really been a great conversation. It's certainly been my pleasure to be your co-host. And I'll just say for those that are dealing with this pandemic to remember 4 C's, that we are a community. Always have care and concern, communicate, and let's continue to collaborate so that we can progress through this pandemic and support each other. So thank you, and thank all of the panelists for a great conversation.
Right. Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
The holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.